I'm going to present the work that ERRA has done on this topic. And all this work starts from the alert that the International Energy Agency launched in 2023 with an important report where the main concern was that grid risk becoming the weak link of clean energy transitions. This is a very important alert for all of us, especially the agency signaled that 1,500 gigawatts in the world are in advanced stages queuing for grid connection. And bottleneck to transition are becoming a problem, while because global investment in grids are more or less stable over the years. Two examples: in the US, data collected by the Institute for this study are very clear. These are annual data, not cumulative, annual data. And about cumulative data, they arrive even to more, 2.6 thousand gigawatt even. And of course, 95% of these is for zero carbon resources, as has been said today by Irina. Of course, some or many of these projects don't arrive to the final commissioning. Historically, only 20% of the queuing project requesting interconnection have reached the commercial operation. So these queuing are also plenty of projects that don't arrive to the final commissioning. This also happens in Europe. This is an example from Italy. I want to signal, for instance, the case of Sicily. In Sicily, we have, these are data mid-24, we have 80 gigawatt for an island that has a consumption of 3.5 gigawatt peak. You can consider. So the situation is very difficult in some places in the world, and the topic of grid scarcity has been the main content of the first ERRA report that has been issued jointly with the Regulatory Assistance Project, RAP, in October 2024. This report is interesting for regulatory authorities because contains a toolbox, an array of regulatory tools that can be used to cope with the problems of queues and how to make the best use of capacity. It works with this scheme. If this is the existing capacity, and of course we have a part of the existing capacity already allocated, we have a limited part of capacity still available. What can we do of this limited part? A first point is how to clean queues or to introduce new clauses. For instance, if you use capacity, okay, but if you don't use, you have to lose it. This is a first point. But then there is a second part that is probably the most interesting, how you can better use the network capacity. And here there are many tools. For instance, grid enhancing technology. Dynamic thermal rating is probably the most important, but also shared connection. There is in the report an important case study from Poland about that. Poland is an ERRA country. or even locational tariff signals. This also is a very important topic. And only after optimizing network capacity, we have to arrive to new capacity building. And for this third level, we enter in grid developments with topics like anticipatory planning, investment execution incentives. The new report that now ERRA is going to publish in a few days, so today is a teaser, is focused on these two topics: regulatory assessment of grid plans submitted by grid operators to the regulators, so how regulators evaluate proposed investments, and regulatory incentives for investments execution in order to be timely and efficient in the investment execution. This new report contains a survey of practices in 13 ERRA members and 5 case studies. Which are the main findings? First of all, integration challenges. The electricity grid have to cope with contemporary simultaneous challenges: renewable integration, growing demand due to electrification, for instance, electric vehicles, not only, heat pumps also, and reliability requirements. That's very important, as we have seen. And this is both across both transmission, but also distribution levels. This is the novelty. Grid plan regulatory assessment. Grid plan it has to be developed according to regulatory requirements, and we also, a regulator have also to think of emerging technology solution, cost-benefit analysis frameworks. Here, the survey showed that there are still different situations among ERRA countries, from comprehensive frameworks to ad hoc analysis. Even in the same country, there are different usage of cost-benefit analysis according to the different level of the project. Stakeholder consultation is a very important topic in order to have a good, efficient development also. And regulatory incentives, as I said, here we see that for the time being, the advanced cases are relatively limited, but there are notable examples. One important example is Oman with its project delivery investment scheme. Other cases are also reported in the report. So which are the recommendations of this report? First of all, back to our initial consideration, grid optimization. The very first topic is to give priority to the efficient use of existing infrastructure through grid-enhancing technologies and other regulatory measures before expanding networks. This is point 0, no regret option. Then about planning standardized assessment. It means to have structured templates for grid plans, so regulators can set their requirements for grid operators in order to have good, clear requirements for their grid plans. Also at distribution level, this is an important point. Cost-benefit frameworks have to be proportionate, especially for distribution projects, and have to consider multiple benefit categories. This is an area where we see room for improvement. Scenario planning and, in general, uncertainty treatment is also an area for improvement, and also cross-sectoral integration, electricity, gas consideration in the future scenarios is also important. Final consideration about stakeholder engagement. This also has to be, normally is also operated, ongoing, but new methods can be experimented. Invested recognition in tariff, here is important to avoid any regulatory lag. Execution incentives. There are some important cases in the report with milestones, with reasonable deadbands, of course, and penalties and bonus for grid operators that reach such deadbands, and monitoring systems. I don't have time, but very easy, in a short time, Oman case study is about milestone with penalties, and there is a very interesting case because milestones are at two different stages, project awarding first and project commissioning after, so with a very calibrated penalty system. And there is also an ex post efficiency assessment of CAPEX. France has a very complex system of incentives that is both on milestone but also on efficiency sharing of CAPEX. So if the actual CAPEX is less than the forecast CAPEX, 20% of the saving is left to the operator. Again, and there is also another incentive scheme of unit cost for a list of assets. Rhode Island is another mechanism different to avoid regulatory lag in the American, in the US environment. That's also very important, and is strictly related to monitoring and to look at the actual expenditure and actual time of execution of investments. Armenia is extremely relevant for this attention to distribution planning, and they reached a very important result because they introduced a mandate for long-term planning at distribution level some years ago, and we have seen the progressive improvement in both losses and reliability. So long-term planning can help not only at transmission level where it is normally used, but also at distribution level where it's still a novelty. And last, I conclude, an interesting case in Romania, that is another ERRA country, with locational tariff signal. From this year has been introduced an injection charge for producer connected to distribution networks in the area where there is an excess of generation in respect to consumption, in order to give a signal to generators that their location is not optimal. So there is both an immediate effect, but also a very important signal to new producers. That's also a very interesting case. I conclude saying that all these work stream of ERRA on grid investments will continue, and the next initiative will be a technical workshop in the winter this year, early 26, I suppose, on the topic of avoiding the risk of gridlock. That is not only a topic for, let's say, more countries that are more advanced with renewables like Europe and the US, but also for countries that are going to introduce renewables now, and they have to think also to this problem. Thank you very much.